Um, Salam, hello everyone, and welcome to the session. My name is 𝗙𝗲𝗰𝗵, and you must remember me from the last conversation we had about the career roles in tech. I welcome you to a new session we have started, which is basically a fireside chat with our leaders in the technology. We promise that we will break down the roles with you uh, together, and we'll bring on all the leaders which we have shared with you through the presentation. Today, this is about turning data from the buzzword into the real practical career, and the paths for the students, the young professionals, and the people who want to switch the careers. Our guest once wrote, "If Baseline were a country, I would apply for citizenship." He has gone from database developer to data warehousing, a BI, which is business intelligence engineer, data engineering, and to analytics and the data science, and eventually, going towards that data leadership over the 15 plus years. And he loves playing with the quirky data sets and open data. Please welcome from Kashmir to the global data leadership, 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗍. 𝗕𝗓, we're so glad to have you here. Uh, it's been a privilege for me to basically, get to know you over the last couple of years. Uh, just want to get started with your introduction, just a two-liner, and then we can start from there.
Yeah, first of all, salam everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. Quick introductions. My name is 𝗘𝗏𝗿. I currently work as a data leader at Meta, leading the go-to-market function for Reality Labs. So if you have seen the Quest or the AI glasses being launched over the last couple of years, that's the analytics that my team has been leading. Prior to that, I have about 8+ years of experience at Amazon and other companies like Oracle and Accenture before that.
Awesome. Thanks, 𝗓𝗏𝗧. I really want to get into start with this. Where did you grow up, and what did success look like you as a student in Kashmir? We are a group of Kashmiris like folks here together, and we just want to start with that.
I think very typical to most people in this call, I would say. So I was born and brought up in Kashmir. I did all my schooling in Kashmir. Till my class 10th, I was in Burnhall. And back then they didn't used to have 11 and 12. So I moved to 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗀 school for my 11th and 12th. So pretty much very average Kashmiri upbringing. Lived in Srinagar all my life till I passed out my 12th standards. And from there onwards, I went for my engineering. That was the first time I went out of state.
Okay. And what did the success look like to you as a student in Kashmir?
I think back then, especially in my generation, I would say the options were pretty limited. Most of the students would either go for their medical science and try to become doctors, or some of the others would also go for engineering. I think those are the two career paths that most of the, at least the better than average students would take. There were still some people who would go for like humanities and science, but the majority of them would go for medical and engineering. So success back then, honestly, like our exposure levels were pretty limited, I would say. We would hardly think about, let's say, going to top colleges or universities. Kashmir back then didn't even have IIT JEE examinations there. You know, if you looked at compared to students from outside Kashmir, everyone would be targeting at least the JEE back then. But if you look back in my generation in Kashmir, there was no coaching for JEE, first of all. Nobody was giving those examinations. Nobody was targeting those premier institutions across the country. Forget about the rest of the world. No one would like barely think about it, right? So I think our horizons were pretty limited back then. All we would do is like, hey, let's go to a decent enough college. I would say in Kashmir, NIT and SSM were the only two options. Jammu had a government engineering college back then, right? My batch was the second batch when AI was getting established.
Got
So
it.
most of the colleges were still getting onto that AI stuff. So I would say all we wanted to go was, hey, let's get to a decent college if you can. Depending on the financial situations, also some people had limited options versus going on like, hey, I have to clear the entrance examination. Some of the other people who had more like perhaps financially affluent, they would think about cities like Bangalore and Pune. where some of the private engineering colleges were there. But that was the limit of our dreams, honestly. That's what we thought success would look like.
And I completely, understand that because from me as well, when I had to give the JE, I had to travel to Delhi. So there was no center in Srinagar. So for us, the success meant being able to attend that examination. So completely correlate with that. Uh, Moving on, what was your first real data job, and how did you find that opportunity? You said like, the exposure was tough. The, meaning of the success was just getting into the colleges. How did you land your first data job?
I would say accidental almost, if being honest. But the reality is, so I graduated my college actually in electronics and communications, and data as a domain wasn't as cool as it is right now. The titles like data engineer, data science didn't even exist back then, right? But I would say I got lucky, and here is the true story on that. So Oracle was establishing the first data warehousing team in India with a team called Triton in Bangalore. And I was always interested in data personally as well. So I was tinkering around in a different kind of a role before that. But then, because they were not targeting specifically data engineers and stuff, I was a software engineer back then who was sort of doing some things related to data, right? So I got to interview there. And I would say back then the interviews were also very different than all the lead code and stuff that we have right now. As long as you had a good understanding of SQL, data modeling, you would basically have a good shot at it, right? So I was in that background back then. I attended the interview I hardly thought I would go through, but a bit of luck, a bit of preparation, a lot of prayers, I guess, from my parents and everyone else. I made it through. And that was the foundation of my data career because we literally went to that office. It was a new team. They gave us books to read because, like, I still remember the Ralph Kimball toolkit was the first book that they gave us and said, like, hey, we have to create a new data warehouse. Very few people have done it before in India. Here are two books. You start from the books and then we will build it out. So I credit that job for turning my career into a data career, basically. And for most of the learning that I had in my initial years, I think that was the job that landed it.
Oh, absolutely amazing. I think a lot of our generation and the generation like before us, they all were accidental professionals into the specialization we have right now. I have the similar kind of a story for another day, but similar thing. We landed up in a job which we did not know about, and then our career started from there. And this is where we want to take that opportunity to give people that ramp up that, hey, this is where you can go without like having to stumble through and start with the like books as well.
Yeah. I think the
Moving
one thing
on.
I want to, if I just want to
Go
add
for
one thing to it, I think success happens when luck meets preparation. You
exactly.
prepare and then you will get a breakthrough someday.
Yeah, I think this code was used by one of our amazing friends, Akib, last session, and I completely agree with this. Like you get lucky, but you need to be prepared to use that opportunity as well. Uh, at what point did you feel now I'm truly a data professional, rather than just a generic IT engineer or a software engineer?
I think there wasn't one event I would say, but it would be over a series of a couple of years. I think once I was done with my job at Oracle, I think that built a foundation that I could now see like, hey, I can go to any company and work as a data professional at that point in time. I was also doing a bunch of startups with my friends on the side, and I was always the data guy in the group. We were doing hackathons on the side and stuff. Like, so we had an Android guy, so we had a data guy, and that was me and stuff. So I started to realize that the expertise was still slowly building there. And then a couple of years into that, I actually joined Amazon in India, which was really the scale data for the first time, right? They were all in big data. Like we went from like DBMS, RDBMS to like petabyte scale
Yeah.
data suddenly. And I think that was when I felt like, okay, yes, I can work with data at scale. And I know some things around data, at least at that point in time.
Oh, yeah, amazing. I think what I'm taking from this conversation is don't align just with the same cohort of the engineers you're building. Build multidisciplinary domain of friendship so that you can get the ideas from, let's say, a biologist somewhere here, a neuroscientist somewhere here, and just like, together brainstorm and come with some good, great ideas. Amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, what were one or two toughest constraints, coming from our background? We all have these a lot of constraints, like including not coaching for JE, not having exposure. How did you practically deal with them? What was your mantra?
I think a couple of constraints, if I want to talk about it, right? I think the first was just the lack of exposure towards technology, job roles at that point in time. Like we didn't have good role models to look up to or talk to, but also this attitude that we felt, for example, in our back in the valley, in our colleges and stuff, even though you would go for a computer science degree, the focus was still on the books and clearing examinations. No one was really talking about, hey, let's code. Can we code every weekend? Can we build things? Most of us used to fear coding, honestly. It used to be like, oh, I don't want to code. I'll just code enough to pass examinations. Examinations were mostly theoretical. Nobody really was doing like hardcore projects that people do now in that. So I think that was the biggest constraint. It developed a fear of coding in us in that time period, while it should be the other way. It should have made us fall in love with coding in our colleges, right? So I think that kind of a start pushed us back initially because it was different in India. There were a lot of colleges and stuff in India, at least, where people were coding a lot and stuff. So we basically honestly started coding once I came out of college and joined my first job. Otherwise, coding in college was just enough to like clear examinations, right? So I think that was one big limitation. And if there's one takeaway people can take away from this one is like, hey, don't be fearful of code. If you want a career in technology, you should be loving code
Yeah,
from the get-go, right? So I think that was one thing. The second thing I would say is back then, I would say this has changed. The internet wasn't as good as you have it now. Uh, my first internet was a dial-up, and the speeds were pretty pathetic and stuff. So we didn't really use the internet as a huge educational mentor that you can use it now. Like if you go right now, the best universities have their courses online.
yeah,
You basically don't have an excuse that I can't learn anything because of my geography. Back then, it was partially true that you would have to do a
true.
lot of stuff to learn the same way that someone in, let's say, Bangalore or even someone, let's say, who's in Harvard. But now you
Yeah,
can have the same lecture the guy sitting in the Harvard classroom can have. So the breakdown of the geographical boundaries, the flattening of the opportunity ecosystem, I would say, has been a huge change. Back then, it wasn't true. Computers were rare. We would go to internet cafes in my day to even check
yeah,
email once or twice a week and stuff. So I think the whole barrier of technology, the opportunity barrier that technology has punched through, I think it's a great flattening. Now, as long as you have the interest to learn, you can learn from the best resources in the world. And second, you can also try out things. I don't
yeah,
think there is anything that you can't try out as long as you have a laptop right now. So in our days, a lot of focus was on tooling and stuff. So you couldn't really get the tool and work on it. Let's say you wanted to be a data engineer, you wanted to do Tableau or whatever was hot back then. It was all licensed and stuff. It was hard to get copies and stuff. The cloud didn't exist as we know it today, right? So now, as a student, you can sign up for a free account for any of these great services and start coding and hacking and basically uh, almost for $0, you can have a whole stack up and running at this point in time, as long as you have a decent internet, and everyone almost has a decent internet right now, right? So I think that whole thing kind of has changed. So it was constrained back then. I don't think it's a constraint anymore, but it was for us for a while back then.
makes sense. What I'm taking away from this one is convert your bandwidth you have in the mobile internet or any internet, convert that into a learning opportunity. So that's amazing. Uh, uh, Basically, transition a little bit here. We'll start with some of the pre-questions we had from the audience. They have upvoted some of them, and I'm just gonna selectively pick some of them. Uh, Many here are from physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and non-CS engineering backgrounds. If someone has that background and wants to move into data, what 6 to 12 month action plan would you give them, like realistically?
Uh, First of all, I do want everyone to understand that regardless of your background, you have a good shot at it. Just don't think that computer science people are the only people who can succeed in tech. In fact, especially if you go back and look at how happens in India, right? For any college placement, they do not care mostly about the branch that you are in. Tech hiring happens from civil engineering to bio, like my college had biotech engineering people appear for the same companies that the computer science people were appearing in, right? So by default, there is this freedom in hiring that your core branch doesn't matter, first of all. A lot of times what matters is if you can clear the interviews. So you have an equal shot at it. But beyond that as well, if you see, tech sector doesn't only work for tech companies, it works for domain companies most of the time.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to feel that you are domain experts coming from your own fields as well. So do not feel that you have any handicap just because you are coming from a non-computer science background. You do have domain expertise. Coming from science, you also have other good advantages, like you're coming from the scientific background. You know experimentation. You have a reasoning approach already built into your mind. And honestly, that is more important than some of the coding skills and stuff. Tools and coding are easy to learn. If we can learn it in 3 months, maybe you'll take 6 months, but it's not like a huge ramp up that people have to go back to college for 4 years to learn it. You can learn it on the side. And so I would say if anyone is from non-computer science background, partially I am as well, first of all. So let me just say that. What I would say, focus on the fundamentals, right? Uh, Pick up a coding language, start working on that, preferably Python, since I'm talking about data roles here. Get into SQL a little bit. Do one visualization tool, Power BI, Tableau, one of the popular ones. Maybe learn a little bit of one cloud environment for ETL and stuff. That's all you need to start with. And all of this can be done in 6 months, honestly, right? So I would say just create a roadmap, pick up these four core skills, and then interview prep, because honestly, that's the gateway to a job. So that is all you would need to to break through into this domain.
Amazing. I think that kind of like gives a good direction for all of us here. Since you touched on the language, I just want to quickly check if they can only focus on one language first. I know we everybody has a favorite, and I just want to tell audience that if we can learn German, if we can learn English, if we can learn Hindi, if we can learn different languages, computer science languages are similar. It's even much simpler than that. If we can focus on one language, what would it be for data? Python, SQL, or something else? And what would you pick and why?
I have an opinion about this, but I'll answer this question in two parts, right? I think there are other languages as well. For example, Scala is getting really popular and stuff. But when I say pick one language, I would straight away say pick Python to begin with, because it opens the door both for your general programming as well as data related roles, right? But to the second question that you had, and I'm going to use a computer science example here, I don't think it's an or question. I don't think it's a Python or SQL. I think for any data related roles, I think it's an and operator, not an or operator. Do Python as your programming language, but think of SQL as your opening data language, right? So I would say do both, because missing either one of them, I think will severely handicap your career in data. So pick up Python and pick up SQL. And honestly, SQL is one of the easier languages to pick up. So it's pretty much pseudo English. So it's not going to be a huge effort after you already are done with Python. So I would say not or, it's an and operator for
And
me.
amazing. No, I totally agree and concur with your and operator analogy, because that's how you build the different perspectives and you know the basics from the database languaging, and then you can use the high level language to implement the applications. For an entry level data role, analyst or maybe a junior data engineer, what are absolute minimum skills they should have before applying? Tools or concepts, and of course soft skills as well.
Uh, I think I partially answered it, but I'll make it very specific on this one. So, and there's a little bit of between analyst and engineer. So I'll kind of like try to thread both in that. So first of all, you do need Python. Let's just say that for both roles. Get good at Python. For people who want to focus more on engineering, there is an ETL aspect to it, things like Airflow and stuff, so DAGs and stuff. So maybe they'll look a little more on that and the cloud implementations. People who want to do more, the business analyst, data analyst kind of a role, data science roles, they probably want to do the data analysis for Python pieces more than the engineering pieces on it. But learn Python from either perspective. Second, SQL is common to both. Just do SQL. Without SQL, you don't have a data career. Then pick up any visualization tool, because usually when you SQL, you get the data, then you have to present the data. You have to do some storytelling, right? So Power BI and Tableau are the two. You pick one and start. They are very analogous once you learn the basics of visualization in that. They are very popular as well in the industry. So, and they're free. So pick one of them, just run with it. And in the end, this is not a technical skill, but if you want a data career, you have to kind of get into that. Learn how to write with clarity, how to explain a complex topic to a non-tech audience with clarity. Because sometimes when you are working with data, it's very complicated, but then ultimately a business person has to take a decision on it. How do you do that story translation? How do you tell that story, whether it's with visualizations, tables, and stuff? How do you make the data speak, right? I think that's the final skill that you really need to succeed in this career. But these four things, I think, are really, really good enough for an initial career.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's the basics where the foundation you start with. And when you know the skill of storytelling, that's all you need with the data. And the data should speak for itself. You should not have to explain through the visualization, hey, this means that. It should
Yeah.
automatically come out of it. This question, we had a highest number of the votes actually. For the students from the tier 2 and tier 3 institutions and regions like Kashmir, we have many of them. What have you seen actually help them compete globally? And I know you have partially answered some of it, but I want to I want to dig deeper into this perspective.
Uh, Let me just start by answering this question from a personal anecdote, right? I am from a tier three college. I did my grad in engineering from the State University in Punjab, but it's a tier three college. Let me just start there. So I am sitting in this room coming from a background of a tier three college. So if you're in a NEET tier three college right now, you can be even in a better place than I am. So let me just start from that, right? However, what happens in this case? So usually the biggest impact that you have from being, let's say, from a premier college versus a tier three college is college campus placements. So really, really high-end product companies usually go to the high-end colleges like the IITs and the NITs. And in the tier three colleges, you may not have the same opportunities, right? So what do you do? One, there may be some companies already coming to your campus. Hopefully you do land a job. But the great thing that is happening is, again, the internet has become a great leveler, right? A lot of these companies now also hire externally based on, let's say, there are hacker groups in India, hacker rank is in India, right? So if you're coding, even from your tier three college and creating your portfolio, getting into those forums, contributing to open source and things like that, right? You can create your own brand identity, which is detached from your college, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've seen that happen. A lot of people do that and then they get those entry level jobs in even tier one companies who never go to tier three colleges, right? So first of all, I
Yes.
think it's a mindset shift that is needed. We all label ourselves and put us under these buckets, right? And I had those as well. I think when I went to Oracle, my team, I was the only non-IIT on my team, very close, and like when I went to Amazon and stuff, right? But then I worked with those people, and I was like, they're pretty much the same, plus minus something. It's not like they have horns on their heads, and there are some geniuses that I can't work with, right? I think you get over that slowly, but for people who are just starting, realize that you're not limited by your college name alone. There are some things, yes, that happen. I don't want to sugarcoat that. For example, your alumni network from a tier one college is extremely stronger than from a tier three college. But I wouldn't worry about it. You can't fix it anyways. What I would do is fix on what you can work on, like yourself. So get really, really good into coding. Get into those, hackathons, hacker ranks. Like if you're a top 10 hacker rank, no matter of your college, you'll get an offer from a great company. They will come and reach out to you. You don't even have to go and reach out to them, right? So
Yes.
there are these opportunities where the college name doesn't matter. Go and hit those opportunities, right? Work harder than people in the premier colleges so that you can cover that gap from the college and stuff. Realize that many people have done it before you. and you will do it. It's not like, hey, once you are in a college, you cannot erase that disadvantage to begin with. You can. I've seen many other people do it as well. So don't let that dink your confidence. You just have to work a little bit harder. I always say this to people. Sometimes people work harder between class 9 and class 12 and go to a good college. If you haven't done that, it's okay. Then work for the next 4 years and you will go to a good company and stuff. If you even miss that, work even harder and then you'll crack a good company a couple of years into your career. So it's just, where do you do the hard work? At some point in time, you have to do the hard work. You can't escape that piece. But as long as you are willing to put in the effort, the Tier 3 college, after a few years, it's just a label. It doesn't matter.
So what I'm getting away from this one is work hard at any stage, and that should, reap you the benefits of your hard work, and don't shy away from any harder challenges. Switching again a little bit more and towards the roles, the data roles itself. You have worked almost, across every part of the data world. You in the day-to-day work, uh, you have gone through all of that transition. Can you tell our audience the real difference between data science, data analytics, data engineering, and business intelligence? Because I think there is this, misinformation about these different roles. If you can, quickly go through them.
Yeah. Just to say it upfront, like I think I worked across a bunch of these roles because a lot of these roles were also evolving as my career was evolving. And the definitions between them, even today to a certain extent, they're not very hard and fast. In some company, a data engineer does something which a BI does in another company. So I do want to say these data titles are very fluid, depending on the company and the maturity of the company and how they use the title. For example, for startups, there is one person who does all of these four roles together, probably, right? But for a very mature organization, they'll probably have, for example, when I worked at Amazon, we did have data engineers, BI engineers, and data science in the same team. So very good role demarcation was there, right? But I'm going to approach it very generically because it does differ from company to company. But I'm just going to approach it very generically. So if you think of it, data exists all around us, right? Everything that we do, if measured, leaves a data trail mark, right? But
Yeah.
how do we get that data to a single place so that it can be useful? So the transportation, the transformation, the cleaning up, and the structuralization of data, that's usually where data engineers come into play. So they do a lot of ETL of the data. They pipe the data from the source systems into a system where it becomes useful in that. So think of them people as building the road itself, right? Then we have the business intelligence engineers and the data analysts. Those roles are very overlapping and analogous to each other. But historically, for many organizations, the differentiation has been the BI engineers, they usually work on creating package reports and dashboards and stuff, which are used for regular, like ops reporting, leadership reporting, exec reporting, and stuff. So they basically take the data that the data engineers have brought into a good structure, and then they create a presentation layer on top of that, usually in the forms of dashboards or reporting. The data analyst actually then start looking at the data like, hey, okay, this is the what of it, but why is it happening? A little bit of it. So they get into the explainability piece of it slowly and slowly. Hey, if our sales are up or down, can you tell me why? What happened that they are up and down? So they start getting into that explainability. They're looking at data more from starting from the statistical perspective a little bit and stuff, but not really that complex and stuff. And then if you look at data science, what comes, they come in and they're like, okay, we know what happened from the data analyst and a little bit of why they think it happened, right? But what is going to happen? More of predictive futures, bringing a little bit of more statistical rigor and math into it, a little bit more ML into it. So they kind of start explaining that, okay, here is what happened. Here's why we think it happened. Here is what we think is going to happen in the future. And more importantly, honestly, for business, it's more about how can we change that future? What can we do to, let's say, we want to increase sales? What can we do about that? We want to bring down customer churn. What can we do about that? So in general, that's where data science starts to come in and kind of take the lead. But again, I think I laid it out in a data engineers produce, get, transform, clean up data. The BI engineers do the presentation of data. Data analysts start to talk about the what and the why of the data. And then the data science people come up and say like, okay, what is going to happen in the future and what we can do to change what's going to happen in the future a little bit.
Oh, thanks. Amazing, like analogy in terms of like, the roadways and the structure, how these different people serve the data at the different levels to give a holistic view of what data represents and what opportunities lie around there. We do have one thing like uh, how important it is for the data scientist or anybody who's working with the data to know the business value of that data. Like how yeah, this is the crux of everything, right?
Essential, I would say. I Whenever a new person joins the team, and I was talking to someone yesterday as well, you have to go and understand the business. Because unless you understand the business, how are you going to design an analytics plan to measure the business? You don't know what are all the input levers, what are all the output metrics that you care about or the business cares about and stuff. How do you measure success or failure? Like who defines those things, right? So unless
Yeah.
you really deeply understand the business process, I don't think you can design the analytics layers to measure that business process. So I would say like this is non-negotiable. You have to understand the business first on that.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, unless you understand what the data means for the organization, you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Maybe you can just like look at the data, but that's not gonna give you anything.
And
Uh,
honestly, like just to add on to it, like many a times what happens is once you understand the business process, you also realize there are a lot of gaps in what data you have to measure it. And only once you identify those gaps, you start to fill those gaps and then the measurement becomes better. Very rarely in professional life, you'll have a case, unlike student life, where you have a clean data set coming in and like, let me just run some model on top of it. That doesn't happen in real life. Most of real life is about like, hey, we have this business process. Most of the things are not even measured to begin with. So we have to start with designing the telemetry for it, collecting the right metrics, and then you can basically drive the metrics.
Amazing. This is a second question, which a lot of folks felt might help them to understand. There is this myth about you being a math genius to succeed in data. Is that true or is it a myth? Like, and what level of math is realistically enough to start?
Yeah. I think it's a huge myth for 90% of the jobs. Let me just say that up front. And then one of the things I feel where people get lost in online courses and stuff is they start with the hard math courses sometimes, with machine learning especially, and then they lose interest because they find it very difficult to go through that. So, for 90% of jobs, you would hardly use any math. Let me just say that. And if you are ever even using some math, the functions are already built into the whatever programming language you're using or the tool you're using, right? So you don't have to invent new math. And even if you're using math, honestly, I think it's high school math plus a little bit of probability is all you're going to use in that sense. So for 90% of the people, they don't even have to do math in data jobs, except for the basic, Excel functions, the Tableau functions and stuff. And honestly, that's high school maths. However, if you are in that 10% of niche roles, for example, applied science, research science, building new models and stuff, yes, there is an element of deep math that is required for those kind of roles, but I would say that's a niche role, I would say. So for the majority of the people, especially you're trying to break into data careers, do not fear math. You hardly have math here, except for like high school math. So I think it's a huge myth in that sense.
Um, Amazing. From your own journey, um, can you share one project, serious or quirky, like, that really showed you your value and what you can do in your career?
I think I'll give two examples, one from my career and one from my personal life as well, because I'm a data nerd at the end of the day. For the career one, I think the most recent one I have is so as we were starting the journey at Meta was actually planning to start our own retail stores, for example, and we launched the first few stores last year, actually, beginning with Las Vegas, New York, and some of the other locations which are very popular, right? And the question before us was, there are great models to do analytics for online commerce, for example, like people who are, like for Amazon.com or any website that you create. The models exist of how to end do telemetry on a website, right from the time a customer lands onto your site, whatever activity that they do, every single click is measured, every single thing is tracked. Then maybe you add something into a cart and then you check out and a sale happens, right? Every single step of that journey is basically measured to the T. But the challenge is that that does not exist in the real world. So when a customer walks into a store, or even if you have to make them go to a store, how do you measure that customer journey in the store? What do they do? Do they come in? Do they go left, right? Are there any kind of experiences that they play around with? Do they try on some stuff? Are they taking a virtual demo or a real demo with our products and stuff? Are they talking to a, let's say, customer rep and stuff, right? And eventually, are they buying something? And what made them buy something, right? That kind of tracking was extremely difficult or almost non-existent to a certain level in brick and mortar retail, right? So we started with a basic blank canvas of like, hey, if we have to get the same fidelity for offline, which exists in the online world, how do we go about it? And our team built a very novel one-piece solution, which has multiple patents now for it, but using a lot of computer vision, for example. In the last 2, 3 years, AI, LLM, computer vision has really become very useful. It was
Yeah,
still there before, but the usability has really exploded in the last few years. So you can really analyze customer journeys using a lot of sensors with lidars, with UWBs, with computer vision, a lot of AI algorithm on top of it to basically get the same fidelity in stores. So if you go to a store next time in your home and you're like, hey, I'm going to walk the store. What kind of metrics could be created for that? Let your imagination run. I think we were able to kind of develop a very good solution for that. So I think that's one of my favorites from my professional life. But I also have a personal one. And that's why I say I actually use data in my own life. So when my kid was born, he was born with a little bit of protein sensitivity, so he couldn't eat the normal foods and stuff. And the doctor wanted us to monitor his protein intakes and stuff, and then his poop reactions and stuff. I actually created an app and started collecting data for every single time he had a feed or a poop or a so we used that app for 1 year to track my kids' intakes and outputs, as I would say. And the doctors loved it so much, they wanted to share it with other people. And they're like, hey, we have never seen someone come back. A lot of kids have this issue, but nobody does tracking like this. So I think that's a great example of how data is not just an abstract concept. It's actually a very usable thing if you bring it to real world examples and stuff. So I loved creating it and it was pretty useful. We used it for more than a year for my kid.
that's amazing. I think I relate to both of the experiences because I worked in the Amazon's Just Walk Out technology where we mapped the reactions and the little bit of quirkiness in like when you're doing a shopping, how people react. I have seen people picking, returning, picking, returning from a shelf like 10 times before taking it because they were just trying to make their mind. So understanding that. And there's an app on Apple iPhones which tells you about the walking symmetry. So I had a case where basically I injured my leg, and that app told me that you have an asymmetry in your walk for the time I was like recovering up. So using that data, I gave to my doctor, and he was like, "Oh wow, this is amazing. I will let everyone know that this exists, and this can help them build their strength back." So knowing where the data exists and using that correctly can do wonders. Uh,
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Next on, there's a real hype about ML, AI, to some extent, really nice. Social media shows these data careers as all fancy, like, flowing data. From your weekly work, how accurate is that?
It is not. It is not. Let me just say that a lot of people come to me and say, I want to create a career in data. I just tell them to go do some boring stuff for a week and say, like, come back in a week if you like this. Because 80% of the time, as a data professional, you're either cleaning up data, setting up data, crunching data, Excel sheet data, or whatever it is, right? The glamorous part of it, even if it's dashboarding or ML and algorithms, it's just like 20% of the time, right? And even if you do the ML piece, remember, once you do the first iteration, the next is about doing that 1% improvement, 0.1% improvement on your model for months after that, right? So it's not glamorous if you're seeing those day in a life of a data professional videos on TikTok or Instagram. It's hardly like that. It's a boring number crunching. job. I mean, like if you like it, I love it, so it's not boring for me. But it's not as glamorous as it's made out to be in the industry. I think the fun days we have is when we actually use data to, get some change, whether it's moving business, making a strategic decision or a direction. I think those are the days that you'll remember, yes, and we have plenty of those. But ultimately, it's I would say it's as boring as any other job where you grind. You're looking at code, you're looking at numbers most of the day. It's not really fancy stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what skills are or hype right now, and which underrated skills actually matter more in the real teams? There's communication, problem framing, domain understanding, documentation, governance. I see a lot of these things getting underrated, but I think, do you want to shine some light on like how important are these?
Yeah. I would say not overhyped, but there is a reason that not everyone needs to learn those, right? For example, a lot of focus sometimes is on learning complex neural networking and advanced ML algorithms and the whys of it, right? 90% of the people will never either create a new algorithm or change it in any meaningful way, right? So for most of the majority of the folks, they don't need to know a lot of detailed math behind it or a lot of like, let's say, neural networking and stuff on that, right? What they need to know is how to use pre-built models and stuff, and then tune it for their own business use case, right? So I think that is a pretty decent, I wouldn't say hype, but it's not practically applicable to the majority of the people, right? Especially the early career people in that sense. I think what is more underrated is one, I would say, is curiosity and asking good questions. A lot of people, like you give them a problem, even problem framing, let's just start from that. Half of the time, people can't frame the problem in the correct way. If you don't frame the problem in the correct way, how are you going to attempt answering it in the correct way, right? So I
Yes.
think problem framing, a bit of natural curiosity, in that sense, and then asking the right questions about it, whether it's to your business partners or XFNs. You have to go back and ask those questions like, hey, someone can just come in and say, like, hey, we're not doing well this week. Why? As a data analyst. The first question should be, what do you mean you're not doing well? Are we not doing well in terms of traffic, for example? Are our sales down? What do you mean we're not doing well? Can you define the problem a little bit more or refine it with me and stuff? So I think that natural curiosity, problem framing, and then I think it's a problem solving attitude. I think those are underrated. I think good writing is underrated. I know we are in the age of LLM where people think anything you can put in the LLM will generate. I think that is I don't, I want to encourage people to use AI. Yes, please use it. It's a great tool. However, do not outsource your thinking to AI because then you will never develop that reasoning in your minds that eventually you are going to need to succeed in your career. Use AI as a tool, great, but do not outsource your complete thinking into it, right? Think and then take the help of AI to refine your thoughts. Ultimately, a person has to be able to do like precise communications and explainability as a data analyst. You cannot outsource that piece to AI. And if you're doing that, maybe you'll get by for a couple of years, but then I don't think you'll scale in your career much in that sense.
I absolutely resonate that the communication and the why part of it. And what I have also learned is if I have a problem statement, rather than explaining verbally to somebody, I write it down. Because while I'm writing down, I understand whether I can communicate this in just a letter without giving any context. If you can do that, amazing. That's your problem statement defining. If you cannot, you refine it and continuously refine that. Uh, you moved into data privacy, governance, and leadership. What non-glamorous skills, which we talked about, helped you grow into leadership position?
Yeah. Again, I would say half of it was accidental, to be honest. So I was supposed to join a team when I moved to the US, and I was the first hire, and there was a manager before me who hired, but he left before I landed, in that sense, right? So I created a team without becoming a manager at first, and then eventually I tried to hire a manager. The one bombed, and the second time my leadership was like, hey, do you want to bomb this again or do you want to become the leader itself? You have created the team, so what's stopping you from becoming the leader? And that's when I transitioned into management in that sense. However, there are a couple of things that do help in that. I think the first thing is the human aspect. As a manager, you are not going to be the superstar on the team. Just accept that. You have to hire smarter people than you. That's the first thing. If you are the smartest person in the team as a manager, you are asking for trouble. You have to be okay with hiring smarter people than you. You have to be okay to give them the limelight. They have to shine. You have to give them the autonomy. You have to delegate, and that's the only way you will scale. If you're still doing everything that you do as an engineer and becoming a manager, you'll never scale. You have to let go of the old job so that you can do the new job in that sense, right? So that attitude shift is something that is really required. You have to care about people. Let me just say that, both in your team and beyond your team. Building partnerships, earning trust from people is essential because you'll realize any great project, any great thing is never done by one person. It's usually done by a team, or for larger things, by a collection of teams. Those people don't owe you anything. You're not their boss. The way you get them to work with you is becoming a trusted partner. So you have to be that person who people trust. You keep your word, you help others, you take help from others and stuff. So you have to build that kind of a network and an ecosystem around you where you set up people for success and then their success becomes your success. If you are not okay with that, I think you'll have a hard time being a manager. I actually don't like the term manager a lot. I think you're more like a coach or a leader in that. So you have to invest in the success of your team and others for you to succeed eventually as a leader as well. So I think those things are really helpful in that. And I think even the tech side of it, I think teams whose leaders are technical thrive better than people whose leaders are not technical. So I know as a leader, you slowly start getting a little bit out of touch with technology, but I would, my advice would be for leaders to still stay connected to your trenches as much as you can. Of course, you can't churn out code as much as you would be, but do what you can, stay in touch, uh, be the leader. Their team comes back to you for even technical advice. Hey, we have this architectural problem. How do you think we should approach it and stuff, right? That makes them respect you. You earn the respect, and then you earn that place as a leader in the team.
Absolutely. And I just want to give audience a little bit of my understanding as well. And from my perspective, when I switched my job from an engineer to engineering leader, Daur was one of the first persons I went to, and I was like, hey, what should I do to become a good manager? And I got the amazing advice. Thanks a lot for that. Uh, Moving on, before we go to head to the question answer, there is this question which a lot of folks are asking around the AIs. Like many beginners worry that the AI will reduce the opportunities for entry-level data jobs. What change do you actually expect in like coming years?
I think any new technological shift, it's not just AI. We have seen other technological shifts before this as well, right? I think it changes the landscape of jobs in society. Yes, there will be a lot of jobs which will slowly start to become irrelevant with AI getting better and better every year. But you also see other sides where AI is also creating a whole new set of jobs which didn't exist 2 years back. Like the whole use of wrappers around the popular models and people bringing AI into like every different kind of business domain, prompt engineering, the AI orchestration pieces that are happening, right? That wouldn't have existed. Those jobs wouldn't have existed a couple of years back. So coming back to the data side of the fence, I think a lot of the easy tasks in data, for example, a lot of data cleaning, a lot of initial dashboard creation, pipeline creation. I think AI will attack those things because those are code first things, and AI is really doing a good job on code first right now. So if you're just creating, like, say, dashboards in Python or stuff like, hey, I just have a pipeline and stuff, I think a lot of those tasks can be easily automated through AI, right? So my advice to folks is that don't just focus on the job elimination. Look at the job creation that AI is also doing. You have to go up the value chain, as I call it. If all you did was write base SQL, yes, that job probably wouldn't exist down the line. However, people have been trying to kill SQL since last 30 years. It doesn't die that easy. It just moves up the value chain, right? So as long as you're adding more value, I think those jobs will still exist. the biggest consumers of data in a company are usually execs or business
Mm,
teams.
yeah,
Those teams find it hard more on the explainability out of the data rather than, hey, can I write a query to get this data? Yeah, AI has automated that job. Let's just share that, right? What does
yeah.
that really mean? Can I trust this data, first of all? Is AI getting me back the right data and stuff? I think those kind of things we are still in the progress of working on. But my advice to that people is like, again, use AI as a tool in your kit. It'll not only improve your productivity, it'll also improve your thinking. Use it as a thinking partner, and then use it as a learning partner to gain new skills that you didn't have before. And you will move up the value chain. As long as you do that, I think there'll be a job for people. There will be some legacy jobs which don't exist. For example, and this is not happening for the first time, database administrators used to be a big job when I started my career. Every company used to have database administrators. But then once the cloud started to come in, the databases became so easy to manage. Data engineers took that job over, and there were no database administrators to a large extent slowly, right? But did those database administrators not go anywhere? They upskill into one of the data other, the data, they became either data engineers or data architects or cloud architects and things like that, and they moved on. So, every new technology wave can seem very unnerving in the short term, but as long as you're upskilling yourself and stuff, I don't think you should be too worried about it. In fact, if you really upskill yourself fast enough than the others, you can be one of the pioneers who uses AI in data roles and then, become a leader in that.
Amazing. I think um, I have an analogy in on this one is when we develop calculators, a lot of people thought that, you know what, we're done. All the calculations can be done with the calculators, but that's not the truth. You use them as a supplement to head towards getting meaningful results out of those calculations, and you still do those, use those tools. I think we are coming towards the question and answer session. I will ask everybody to drop their questions on the chat. I do have already a few of them. I'm just looking through them. Just give me a minute, and I want to make sure that we cover everyone's question. And if somebody has a live question, they can come on the mic and, um, basically ask the question up front as well. Uh, there's a question from Facebook. Please comment on what language to focus on to be able to enter the data science. I think we already answered that.
Just do
Python is
Python.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just do
yeah,
Python.
exactly. Peer Junaid says, "Hi, sir. I'm a second year BSc Economics and Data Science student at 𝗬𝗲. Tell me what should I do to make a good career in data science and good college abroad for master's in data science."
I think there are two pieces to it. If you want a data career, I would say, first of all, don't be afraid of coding. A lot of times, a lot of people in Kashmir educational colleges, they're very afraid of coding. Don't be afraid to code. Code every day. Get the base skills that you want for the entry level jobs, like I said, like, hey, pick up Python, pick up SQL, pick up one of the visualization tools, and just maybe do experimentation on one cloud and just run with it. However, if you want to get into a foreign university, it's a very different question than getting into the data industry. For foreign universities, I would say, depending on your financial situations and stuff, uh, try to get a scholarship. I think there are a lot of those available. Talk to people who have already done it before. The Kashmiri diaspora, there's a huge diaspora who has been to foreign universities. Uh, my experience with that has been it's usually the lack of information and exposure which prevents Kashmiris from actually gaining access to foreign universities than the actual admission process on that. So definitely get into communities where people who have done it can mentor you and talk to those people, figure out the admission criteria, the timelines, and how you could basically up level your application to those and hit it from that side.
Amazing. Ganga from Zoom is asking, can you suggest 2, 3 project ideas for data science, data engineering as a fresher? Yeah.
Yeah, I can. First of all, I think any project that you pick up should have three elements to it if you want to really do it right. One, the coding element. And usually students start from already prepared data sets. This is one of the pitfalls. They'll take a good CSV from Kaggle or one of the other places and they're like, hey, I'll just work on it. Don't do that. Go and get data yourself. build scrapers in Python, do API calling through Python, and establish that skill set as well. And there are a lot of public data available, even like Best Buys, Amazon, that allows you to do a bunch of stuff on their catalogs and stuff. So first, don't skip the gathering the data step by using a CSV already available on Kaggle. No, go and pick up a project which has a data collection piece as well. You need to code those in Python. Second, once you have the data collection piece, also do some kind of data cleanliness transformation, especially if you want to use it for ML algorithms and modeling on the second stage, right? Don't get very clean data in that sense. And then you could either take a visualization approach to it. I'm going to create a public, so Tableau has a very good public website. It's called public.tableau.com. Power BI has a similar one. You can sign up for free and you can start building on those ones. So go and create your first dashboards there, create your portfolio there in that. A couple of really good ones. So e-commerce is always a good one to start with. It gives you a real good way to understand a business, and there is enough good data available out there that you can actually build something meaningful on it. So I would do something like that. But I would also recommend, I always like people who have this one, I call it my own project, data project, because it's really helpful in interviews. There was this candidate who had taken Spotify data, but then she had done something very personal for her own life. And she said, like, hey, I would like to talk about that project. I think those are the kind of things that are very good, both for learning, because there was no example of how to do it outside. She literally figured out how to do something with data, and then she made it applicable to her own personal life, and then she also shared it in the interviews and stuff. So do a couple of public data. Try to see if there is in your own life if you can do something with data, because then you'll have to problem solve. For everything out there, you'll have solutions already built in that you'll copy paste and reuse and reconfigure. But if you start with a problem in your own life and say, like, how can you use data to improve it? You'll actually have to problem solve a little bit and write code from scratch and stuff. So I would strongly recommend do some of those as well.
Oh, amazing. We have a question from Dr. 𝗕𝗵𝘁. Coming from the stat background, I use R heavily for its speed, statistical libraries, and visualization capabilities. However, I often hear that the Python is the preferred language for the production. From a software engineering perspective, what is the specific bottleneck within the R in the production environment? Is it the speed or just about the integration with the existing infrastructure?
No, it's a beautiful question because I started my career in R. So when we started the whole data science journey, R was the preferred language because it was all over in the universities. The libraries available for R were advanced than Python 10 years back, if it's hard to
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
Python had to catch up to R in that sense, right? But then I think what happened over the last decade was as more and more engineering focused people got into Python, Pandas was published, Skillet, and all of those packages were published. The tools available in Python became very easy to use. And there is an ecosystem now that has developed around Python, which just makes it the natural language for choice. So I came from R. I completely understand your situation. And I had to switch to Python at some point in my career because everyone else was doing Python. I remember in my initial days, I used to write R code, and then we had to deploy it as a package into production to be called as a package because the rest of the world was in Python, right? And then it just became too cumbersome for everyone around me. They're like, why are you doing a R package? Just do a Python package because then we can call it natively in production systems. With PyTorch and all of those, the maturity in the Python world has simply outstripped the pace of development on R. Over the last 3 to 4 years, if you see, there is now a dedicated community which is trying to write the same packages for R that are available for Python. And that effort has kind of succeeded to a certain extent. But just from practicability, I'll say, because the whole ecosystem works in Python like world, every company uses it. There is good public and open source packages around it. It's just easier to work with Python at this point in time. So I would recommend if you're a new person, start with Python itself. If you're like me, who started on the R side of the world, I would say Python is enough to switch over now. So I did the switch over many years ago. I would also recommend it to anyone else as well. I miss R. R was actually faster, especially on the hardware side. But at this point in time, I think Python has won the battle.
Yeah. Um, I think there are a lot of questions around the tools, websites, or the courses, which can help in the freshers. Any good set of the tooling which people can use to try these out because you don't want to build a dev environment from the scratch because that takes a lot of time. So any suggestions on that?
I do have a couple of suggestions, but I also want to say one thing. A lot of times people focus too much on which course to do and stuff, which website to start. And then they'll start, and then 80% of Coursera has actually published statistics on it. Like 80% of the people who start a course never finish it. So it's not which course, it's about do you have the discipline and the commitment to go through any course and then maybe switch on to a better one later if you find it, right? So for complete basics, I think Coursera has, if you are from the Google background, you can do the Google Data Analytics course there. They also have the Data Engineering Foundation specialization there. There is another website called Data Camp, and it has these verticals like data analyst, data engineer, fundamental tracks that are already inbuilt, which give you a good coverage on like, hey, what are all the different things that you should do it. So those are the top of my mind, but I would say go and start with anyone. You can't go wrong. Google the top 5 popular courses, ask ChatGPT, and start in any one of those 5, whichever you do. The more important thing is, do you have the discipline to go through that entire course? And then you should use that course only as a roadmap. Don't limit yourself to what the course teaches only. For example, if it teaches you the basics of Tableau, are you only going to stop there? No. Go and create your own Tableau. It's free. You can download it from Tableau, tableaupublic.com. Everything is free. Power BI is free. Go and download it. You have to get hands-on dirty with it. If the course taught you to do one dashboard, sure, do it. But then go get your own data and create your own dashboard after that. And similarly, I would say for like Python, ETL, cloud, go and create your own AWS account. The free tier is there for everyone. Go and start playing around. All of these major platforms right now have good educational content, also good documentation as well. Like if you go to AWS, the documentation is amazing, right? So and then AI has made it really easy on the other side. So I would say it's more important than, hey, I can only pick one best. Don't do that. Start with a broader course or a roadmap, and then the main thing is discipline, commitment to it, and then your own natural curiosity. Like, hey, the course may teach you just 10%. Are you willing to self-learn the rest of the 80% by actually doing hands-on practice and hands-on projects and stuff? In terms of books, if someone just wants to start, I think the favorite ones I have Python for Everybody by Severance and Python for Data Analytics by McKinney. Those are like the fundamental 2 books that you need to do. SQL Quick Start Guide by Walter Sheets is a very good starting point. And then SQL for Data Science by Pete Tate. These are the 3 that I would recommend.
Okay. I would note them down. I will get them from 𝗏𝗏 and I will share that with the audience to make sure that they have their sources. Thanks a lot for all the questions, folks. I want to go in the last session, which is rapid fire. Just a couple of questions. One online course you would recommend to absolute beginners in data.
The data specialization on Coursera.
Amazing. One technical skill every data professional must build.
SQL.
One bad learning habit you see again and again in students.
They start but never finish.
One quirky data set you will allow the audience to explore for fun.
The census data, it's pretty rich, especially the Western countries. It's very rich.
𝗏𝗏, what's one 30-day challenge you would give everyone here to move on one step closer to the baseline citizenship?
Uh, it's a tough one, but a good one. But I think if you really want to get into it, I would say one, set up some regular time. Every day, say like I'm gonna do 2 hours to this, whether it's morning, evening, whatever time works for you, right? But promise yourself that you will never skip that. First of all, every single day, I'm gonna do 2 hours of studies for data. That gives you 60 hours in that month. Even within the 60 hours, say I'm going to do 3 skills, for example. I'm going to practice SQL or learn SQL. I'm going to do Python. I'm going to build one dashboard at the end of it using all the 3 skills that I have learned. So if you do that in 30 days, I think that would be a fairly good time. Hopefully, that gives you the love of data that I have and many other people share. And then you won't need a 30-day challenge. You'll just do it for your life. But it may also tell you that, hey, maybe this is not for me, or maybe there are certain parts of it that I like more than the other, and you'll get a better sense of what to pursue next.
Amazing. 𝗏𝗏, this has been amazing session to interact with you on your journey from Kashmir to a leadership position at Meta. You know, superheading a lot of folks around and being the mentor to so many of us. I wanna thank you for taking this opportunity to talk with us, to give this insights to all the budding engineers, the early career students, early career professionals, everybody, right? And sharing all of that information with us. I would love to have Dr. Lal here to thank you officially and make sure that the closing notes on this one. Is Dr. Lal here, or
Our
I think
a deep debt of gratitude to you. I was going to ask you, 𝗘𝘅𝗽𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀. I want to talk to your neighbors.
Originally long back, 𝗪𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃, but I think everyone around that time has moved out. So currently based out of Bagh-e-Mehtab. Been there for 20 years.
𝗪𝗲𝗃𝗃 to 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗿𝗃 to 𝗧𝗲𝗃 to 𝗕𝘂𝗶𝗿 to 𝗦𝗰𝗶𝗿. I want to tell everyone, impossible is nothing. Impossible is nothing. Those 39 of you who are listening to this conversation, and many who you would listen when we go on Facebook Live, जाओगे or YouTube पे जाएंगे, become better than 𝗘𝗏. That's your challenge. Use 𝗘𝗏 to become better than 𝗘𝗏. Use 𝗘𝗏 to become better than 𝗘𝗏. And you have that capacity. 𝗬𝗏, you have that capacity. 𝗬𝗰𝗁, you have that capacity. 𝗘𝗄𝗵𝗁𝗀, you have that capacity. अगर 1-2 साल थोड़ी विकेट खराब हो गई कुछ कारण से 𝗘𝗄𝗿𝗀𝗀, that's past. Be 𝗘𝗏s of future, be 𝗘𝗏s of future, be better than them. So again, to 𝗘𝗏 for framing the questions, I think Kashmir Care Foundation owes both of you a debt of gratitude. We all owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you so much.
well, thanks
Thank
a
you so
lot.
much for having me. First of all, again, like I think the gratitude is from our side, honestly, because I think Kashmir shaped who I am. Honestly, I spent all my initial 18 years there. So I owe a debt of gratitude to my motherland. This is just me helping in a small way that I can. And I fully agree with you, honestly. Like, I think my life is not a roadmap, but I think it's just like, hey, what's the minimum possible? If you put in the dedication, and work hard on it, this is the minimum possible. I would love for our next generation to go 10x what I have done, because I wasn't anyone special. I was an average student, average colleges, everything average, but Allah Ta'ala still granted me a little bit of success in this world. I wish for everyone here to succeed even more than I have.
Inshallah, inshallah. I want to, Adil, give me 30 more seconds.
Sure.
आपके सेशन की शुरुआत कहाँ से हुई? And I'm a listener. नहीं, मैं बताता हूँ. Many people do not know this. Adil perhaps knows, Tawqi knows, 𝗬𝗏 knows, Mahi knows, Tanzila knows. मैं इन लोगों के नाम बता रहा हूँ because they're my leaders. You talked about what the quality of a leader has to be. He or she has to assemble with people better than him. So then जो मैंने नाम गिनाए, सबा जी हमारे साथ जुड़ी हुई हैं. They're better than me. So they make us all look very good. मेरी बात हो रही थी खुर्शीदुल इस्लाम से. 𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗃𝗃 कश्मीर को ये देखते हैं.
Yeah.
ये कह
I
रहे थे
know
हमारे
Khurshid Bhai. Yeah, I know him very well. I worked with KEI at the beginning to design their curriculums and everything. A couple of years ago when they started to do the STEM thing, so I was the one who started their curriculums for STEM and everything.
माशाल्लाह. So उन्होंने कहा कि हमने mentorship शुरू की थी. दोपन اشتهاج تاجي पंसा बाचे मगर we had to show them what 𝗪𝗏.
Yeah.
That's how ETG started. The engineering technology group was a borrowed concept. We took that concept from him. With his permission, we rolled it. उनके काफी बच्चे आज देख रहे हैं. दानिश biology का बंदा है, HIV पे काम कर रहा है, but he got prompted today. Danish, I know you're listening. He's gonna. The AI is not data science in terms of data that you talked about. It's biological data. It's weather data. It's earth sciences data. It's everything we see, we hear, we consume. With that, again, Adil and 𝗘𝗏, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone.